Hello, everyone. Welcome and join me in welcoming Caruso Colzi, one of the most brilliant hypnotherapists I know. He's Italian and he's basically brilliant. What more can I say? Caruso, just say hi and tell them about you.
Hi, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here.
Okay, so we were having a chat the other day and we were discussing about how the mind is quantitative, right? If you've noticed, everything that you know is basically through comparison. Like even the things that you see when you observe colors, if there is nothing to compare it with, you don't get a proper idea. Like if you, for example, close your nose and eat an apple, it tastes like a potato. Most people cannot tell the difference. So you need all of these faculties functioning because you can only discern one thing in comparison with something else. Okay. This is a very, very interesting aspect when it comes to self-discovery, because if all of your understanding, if all of your observations depend on quantitative comparison, how are you really going to discover who I am? Who am I? It isn't that. Of course, the true discovery of who you are has, sort of begins when you start going beyond the mind. So that's obviously not what this is about, because that cannot be talked about, that cannot be explained. But when we were talking, Caruso had some amazing ideas, which I felt can really help to shatter a lot of the mental constructs we have that kind of prevent us from going beyond the mind in those regards. So you can take it from here, Caruso.
So thank you so much. And as always, I appreciate the talks that we have each other because they are really, really inspire me. And I would like to start like this because you were talking about comparing us with stuff that we perceive. So this is a kind of definition of reality that I have. But before I start, I would like to say that I'm not here to give answer, if not open much more question. So because I believe question, they can move us from inside out instead of make us stuck in the truth. And I would like also to talk a little bit about truth and what is it. But starting from the reality concept, to me, at least my definition is reality is a relationship between who you really are and your interpretation of what you perceive. So that means that you use as tool perception. And through perception, you have an interpretation of what you perceived, and you compare who you really are with what you see, what you hear, what you touch, and whatever. So in that case, reality has to be studied, quote unquote, a little bit, because we know that perception are limited. And from my point of view, it's fine if they are limited so that we can do experience. And we have in every experience that we do, a beginning and an end. So, but in this way, you open also different level of limitation. For example, your eyes can see just between blue and red. You cannot see the infrared or the ultraviolet. And your ear can just hear in between, let's say, let's make it simple, between 20 and 20,000 hertz. I mean, cycling per second. So we have those kind of limitation, and the perception that we have, they're not even capable to interact each other. So we need the brain to interpret what we perceive. Can you imagine how complex can be the studies of the brain, the reality, the matter, yeah? And so when you want to measure something, you have different problem with that. So on one way, you have the possibility to have a beginning and a end for each separate experience, so that you know when you finish, you know when you are understanding or you have understood. So you can divide also time in past, present, and future, which we know it's not true, because quantum physics says that time it's basically all present, it's circular. I mean, it's already here.
Yes.
So through those limitations that we have, we build up, we create basically this kind of reality, which I would call from now on virtuality.
Yeah, I like that word.
Yeah, but you have in indie culture, you have so many things about, I believe it's Maya.
Yes.
Yeah, so we say il velo di Maya, that it's kind of reveal something that it's behind a veil, yeah?
Yeah.
And we refer to Maya as well. So, and don't forget, the Italian culture is also not just Greek or Latin, but we have so many influence from India, from the valley, from Indus Valley. So,
Wow.
yeah. And talking about measurement, yeah, and comparison, because how do you measure something? You have a unit measure, which is absolutely not true. It's just conventional. Yeah. And for example, this is really funny. Someone said that, you know, I live in Italy. This Pen Island, yeah, the shape of the boot, we say, yeah. This Pen Island has average 6,500 kilometers of coast.
Right.
So, and I always ask, but from where you measure it? From the moon, from the sky, by helicopter, by walking? Because it changed the measurement dramatically. Yeah.
And even the maps, right? I've read a lot that the map that we see is nothing compared to actual reality. It was kind of changed to make certain the countries that made the maps wanted to look more important. So those countries are all big, whereas actually the other continents are like way bigger and spread out. So that was also,
So it's about interpretation.
yeah.
Interpretation that goes hand to hand with values, beliefs, with your culture. I mean, we are opening something really, really huge. That's why I'm saying I'm not going to say today answer, or I'm not saying the truth. In fact, I believe everything is invention, including this one. It's an invention.
Yeah.
So we have to deal with that. And for example, back on the previous example, if you measure the cost, where the sea agitated, up, shallow, or calm, because then the cost it's different. You understand? So you have some variables, and we take for granted that measurement, it's something like this, it is like this, but it's not true. I mean, I should say I am 172 centimeters high, but that's not true, because if I stay walking all the day, my spine compress, so in somehow I'm shorter. And if I stay on the bed, I relax, I'm higher. Nothing is stuck in. in this reality. Everything is moving. We know that. So one
And it's not even just you, right? It's also things like human beings contract and expand, but also things.
yeah, and I tell you something about unit of measure. You
Yes.
know that 1 meter, it's basically 1 bar of metal, yeah, inside of a box, which is at that temperature, at that pressure, 1 bar pressure, and it has to kept in that way. Otherwise, if it's warmer or colder, it can bend, it can delay. So it's not more 1 meter.
Yeah.
And you can say, yeah, but maybe even if it's it dilates really teeny tiny, of course, but you have to measure the circumference of the word, that teeny tiny millimeters. If you add and add and add meters, it becomes kilometers. So it depends
Yeah.
what you want to measure. For example, you know, the atoms, atoms, it comes from Greek. They believed that the atoms, it means it means non, toms, divisible. Yeah, so
Right.
indivisible, non-divisible, it means. So then
Mm-hmm.
it was the teeny tiny particle, then
Mm-hmm.
discovered as more. But for example, if you make grow the nucleus of the atom like a basketball,
Mm-hmm.
electrons, it will be a mosquito, a little mosquito flying 5 kilometers far from
Oh my God.
basketball. That means the atom is empty. And so you have 5 kilometers now, because the atom does like this, where you are measuring the matter. Matter is not that consistent. It's just energy that you concrete, that you compress.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, this kind of talks, because lets you understand that everything that you encounter, you can move it. It is moving. Nothing is fixed. Also, talking about our job, people believe
Yeah.
that they sick or I cannot do nothing. No, it's not true. You can change. Everything is changing, so you can. Yeah. If you want, I go over, I mean, talking about infinite. Yeah. We know,
Yeah. Go on. This is so much fun.
we know that in between 1 and 2, the numbers, yeah, 1 and
Mhm.
2, you can divide in so many parts, infinite parts. Yeah. You say half of a half, half of a half, half. Okay. And you take it for granted in school. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is infinite. But my question is, did you count it? Who said that after 1 billion of billion, it changed dramatically the rules? We
Right.
if I say, for example, half of the numbers are odd and half of the number are paired. Who
Yeah.
said that? You have to prove it, but you cannot. So sometimes what we consider a truth, it's not a truth, it's convention. And it has to be like this because relationship that we have between interpretation and what we perceive, it creates reality. So that's why I believe we should investigate more and more in this kind of movement that we are in, so that we can discover ourselves. As you said, we try to understand who we really are, comparing what we see outside.
Yeah.
So the outside, the inside, it has to be in somehow similar. No?
And this example that you gave about this meter measure, right? The standard meter. Now we were looking at the meter from a very physical, material perspective about measuring distance. But when it comes to who am I, that investigation of trying to understand myself, or even if you're not even remotely spiritual, if you're trying to understand the world for real, the scale is continuously changing. So even to know who I am right now, I can only know this in comparison with what I was 5 minutes ago. Interestingly, I just bought a t-shirt. I should have worn that today. I just bought a t-shirt yesterday that says, I am not what I am. I am not what I was 10 minutes ago. So, I mean, you're continuously changing. Therefore, your measurements are continuously, and even measurements, right? This NASA did a study where they fixed VR goggles in front of everybody, which presented them with a flipped over version of the world. So they were seeing everything upside down, and they struggled a lot for 21 days. But after 21 days, the brain had rewired and they saw everything as straight. So this is scary, because if the brain is readjusting to accept reality in a certain format, then the scale is messed up. Like, who is doing the measuring, and what are we measuring it with, the world or ourselves with, right?
So first of all, I say always, the brain is the fabric of the mind. Mind and brain are not the same. Yeah. And you see, also with words, we get trapped. So many times I can hear, because lots of my clients are medical MD, they doctor. So they talking about consciousness from another perspective of where we are talking about consciousness. Yeah. So they say someone is conscious or is unconscious. Yeah. And if he's conscious, that one is consciousness, which we know it's the way around. So
yeah,
it's confusing. And when you start to say this word, it measures this thing. And we know that everything that we see, each of us, it's different. I mean, if I see this pen, and you can say it's black, it's short, it's whatever, yeah? But it depends also, we said, reality, it's a relationship that we have also through the interpretation of our perception. We believe it's the same, but it's not. For example, I'm attached to this pen emotionally, maybe you're not. So my interpretation, it's not just about perception, it's about what you put on perception.
yes,
It's really, really complex. So to me, it should be, because it gives us much more possibility. In fact, what I see right now at this stage in the world, it's lots of people trying to give answer, to say the truth, to this, it is like this. But not even science should be like this, because a good scientist should say, I did an experimentation, and that's what comes up. He never say this is the truth. He talks about evidence. But we know that up here, evidence is it's something just at the surface. Yeah, so we continuously scratching the surface. And wherever you go deep and deep, you're scratching the surface, because
yeah, of the next layer.
Exactly. Or, I mean, you can say down or you can say up. Yeah. To me, talking about, for example, lots of people says the sixth sense. Yeah. They try to find this. And to me, it's really simple. It's awareness. It's that stuff that we have, that ability that we have to know that we perceive. And so awareness goes up and up through experiences. The more you do experiences, the more you're aware of something you are, and you scale the level of your awareness through the experience that you have. And talking about words, did you see that everybody claims that they are expert? But expert, it means you had experience. So expert, it comes from experience. And experience is something subjective, not objective.
Yes.
So people sometimes that talk to me, and you know, because we're friends, we talk a lot, yeah? They say, oh, Caruso, you're confusing me. No, I'm trying to tell people you have much more possibility if you up and alive those concepts instead of closing down.
Yes, because exactly, if we only understand things by comparison, then we are more likely to understand it better if there's more things to compare it with rather than less.
Yeah, and
so
thank you so much, because it just clicked something in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
We try to understand who we are through normality, which normality is already a relationship between extreme opposite.
Yes.
But, I mean, we're trying to find normality in ourselves, but we are special. There's nothing special to be normal. But to be special, it means to be unique. And if you are unique, you cannot measure yourself with no units, not scale. And this one, it scares a lot people, because it makes feel them lonely. But the strange thing is, we all are special in different ways, so we're not lonely, special.
Yeah.
It seems beautiful, but it's not, because you can live and breathe those concepts every day.
Yes. No, it makes a lot of sense to me, because even as a therapist, I find myself telling a lot of people that nobody else experiences this moment like you, which is precisely the point of our spiritual development, right? To just, I mean, in Hinduism, we say you are just here to experience this moment as you, because there is no other you. And are you doing justice to that? You know, are you more busy trying to be something else, someone else, or something else? But nobody else experiences. I've asked people, I see this color as red and this as green. How do we know for sure that what I see as red is not what you see as green? Because we both learned to label the same thing. But just because we all agree on the labels, we assume that everybody is having the exact same experience. And I cannot attest anything about colors, but at least, you know, at least sensitivity, the way we perceive incidents and the way things affect us and the way we experience emotions. What is anger to me could be very different to you, you know?
Absolutely, we know, because we do this kind of work, yeah, with people. I work with people that they claim they are anxious, and when I ask, how do you know is anxious, they don't know. And so I say, what do you feel when you feel anxious? And they tell me different stuff. Sometimes they say, I have something in my head. Sometimes they say, I'm something in this. So it's so different, yeah? But we try to narrow down what it should be spread up. And I tell you something about the change in the remembering, because this is something that I'm working a lot with my clients. You know, the Buddha said, remember that the only constant in life is change. But he was saying, remember. So it pops up in my mind, Plato, that says, knowing, it's remembering. And that we know it is true, because you cannot know something if it's not in yourself. So you were talking about color. Look, we can try to agree that this is red, whatever form of red, because I have different lights here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let's say we call it this red. Yeah. First of all, we have to know for the colors theory that this piece of paper is accepting, absorbing all the frequencies, color frequencies, and it's pushing out the red. Okay, so this should be called everything but red. So it's pushing out red. It is not red. It's what appears to be red. But if you scratch more surface, you can say that inside of you, you have receptor for this color, for the redness. So that means you always perceive what is already in you. That's why we try to compare the reality outside to understand who we are.
Yeah.
You understand? Because we know, I mean, through meditation, through self-hypnosis, through lots of works, anytime that you watch inside, you see the infinite. And it's difficult sometimes. So
Yeah.
what I told you, it's important that perception are limited so that we can in somehow, quote unquote, measure through our experience and interpret. In this way, and I really don't want to offend no one, because I know in India you have a good culture of transcending, yeah? But in this topic, transcending is not that good, because if you transcend those limits, you cannot do the experience. You do all the experiences in one, and you cannot understand where you are in space, in time, and in energy. So it's kind of tricky.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an amazing way of putting it. That's exactly what I say. That's my experience as well, that it's not fair to this body to just sit and trance out and disappear. I mean, it's nice to have that also. I mean, it's the experience or disappears, so it's complicated, but in a way it's nice to have that as an experience. But then you're here to experience this finite, like I said, just you're here to experience the universe as you. And that actually brings me to a very interesting question by Kirtan. I think just takes this discussion forward. She says, though at a micro level, human experiences are different, don't all experience the same at a macro level. How is that even possible, though? How can we all have the same experience at the macro level?
Okay. So first of all, I'm not that good in science, and those kind of questions, they try to understand more and more. Okay, so it's really complicated, but let's say like this: micro and macro and micro, yeah, big and small are the same, and we know through lots of culture. For example, in Tibetan Buddhism, in India, you had lots of explanation. Also, Advaita Vedanta is good to understand everything is all, is not divided. Yeah, and but let's say like this, go experiential. Yeah, if I ask you, what's the shape of a point? Imagine in front of you a point. Yeah, if you, beside what in school they taught you, yeah, if you imagine a point in front of you, what's the shape of this point? And if you zoom in the point, lots of people say it is circular. But we know a point, it's adimensional. That means non-dimensional. But through our experience, we give a monodimensional, which means we give a point which is non-dimensional, one dimension.
Yes.
You can go even further. You see, imagine in front of you a line, a straight line. We know the line has a certain length, yeah? But how thick it is. And I mean, and they teach us that a line is got one dimension. But as soon as you focus in, you give in one dimension more, so it becomes bidimensional, and you can go over and over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes sense that we say the brain is limited because it's a fabric of the mind. Someone says, which I don't agree 100%, but someone says everything it's built up from the mind. We are mind. And then we start to deal with, no, the system is, we are soul, spirits, we are mind, we are consciousness. Yeah. So it gets tricky with terminology. And we have to be careful with terminology. For example, we know we have a language of mathematics, and it tends to be complex, but really precise. But if I tell you what comes up if I do 1 + 1, everybody say 2. But you have to accept that the 1 is half value of 2. So
Yes.
in the way around, for Greek people, from Greek philosophy, it was absolutely not making sense, because they were saying the 1, it's composed by 2. And the first time that I heard this sentence, yeah, in Italian, maybe it sounds better, but I just translated literally, okay? I hope you understand in English. So I said to myself, no, this speaker, he did the way around. It cannot be possible that the 1, it's composed by 2, yeah? And then I start to wonder and wonder and wonder, but you see, our reality, we said, it's composed by back and forward, left and right, up and down. So this virtuality is duality.
Yes.
We were talking about duality when we were exploring the Advaita Vedanta, and they say non-duality. They don't say the allness, they say non-dual, which is much more precise, because we are perceiving the all through the perspective of non-dual, but we just have this duality.
Yeah.
So if you have this experience and this other experience, the plus and the minus, if you put them together, you have the all. So archetypically, 1, it means all. And of course, the all, it's composed by the 2 halves. So
Yes.
imagine if you don't wander, spend time talking with yourself, thinking, deepen some topics, you risk a lot in the life, because you just take it for granted, something that people says, but it's not about your experience. So
Yeah.
you believe is a truth, but it's just a convention. I hope I did a big opening and not answering nothing, because that's what I do usually.
No, I think I would like to say something, because I think it's when we start to experience and then we connect with other people who are also experiencing, is actually when we start to realize how different macro level experiences also are. Like, what is happiness to me and what is happiness to you? There's nothing similar there, and I mean, we assume that everybody wants to be happy. We have this proverb in English, one man's food is another man's poison. So how can we say that macro level experiences are the same? It just seems the same because we have all agreed on the same labels. Like you said, one person thinks this is anxiety, for another person something else is anxiety. you know, and again, it's all about compares and contrasts. So those who've been through a lot, like one friend, the whole family went through a great deal of pain, and suddenly she just stopped relating to all her common friends because she was like, all they seem to talk about is how the child is not doing the homework well. At least your child is healthy, you know. I don't care if my child does its homework or if it fails or passes or gets the first rank. She is healthy and she is happy. That's enough, because that had been tested so many times. So her reality, her good and bad, was very different. So we don't know. Our own definitions of good and bad are constantly changing. What we wanted so badly, 2 days ago, 2 years ago, we don't want that anymore now. And you know what we hated earlier, now we crave it. Like one friend long ago had mentioned in one of the groups that we had. He said, difficulties are good. Like without difficulties, you're so lax, and you're a pathetic version of yourself if you have no difficulties. And when I had heard that for the first time, I was like, intellectually I know you're right, but I really don't feel it. I would just like an easier life, you know. Now I'm like, oh my god, I get it. You know, it's scary when things are good, because you're becoming loose over here. So when you develop that perspective, then you can see. So macro level experience, I don't believe that they are similar, but then everything is changing. Maybe in one moment it happens also, I don't know.
And it opens another window because when we say macro and micro, basically we are talking about virtuality, duality. We're
Yes.
talking about the real reality.
Yeah.
Okay? So we still in the realm of duality, because this is tiny and this is huge. Yeah. But as soon as we stop dividing and we try to put together, we can find the whole. But there's a big problem, you know, in 1927, a man, Heisenberg, did the uncertainty principle. Yeah. And basically goes like this. You have a particle. If you know where is the particle, you can know the motion of the particle. If you know the motion, the speed of the particle, you basically don't know where is it. And this is tricky, you know, because you are trying to say, okay, now I stop myself, I analyze what I have, and then I go back and do something. And it gets tricky because you are two different level. It's like, do you remember where we were talking about particles and waves in quantum physics? Yeah, we were talking about the, the two slots experiments.
Yes.
Yeah, so the observer influence the observed, but sometimes you are observed. And sometimes you are the experiment, sometimes you are, I mean, it depends.
Yes.
On the point of view. That's why my definition of reality is, it is a relationship between who you really are, because that our, yeah, they say in Advaita Vedanta, I mean, you are that. You try to discover, you try to speak that thing, but you cannot. So you say non-dual, you don't say the whole, because you still are in this part of duality. So in somehow you are particle and waves together.
Yes.
And particle, it's like the matter compressed, and the wave is just energy. So it's really, really difficult to understand when we are what. It depends by the point of view, and you have one point of view. You cannot have several at the same time. Otherwise, you could say, I'm the all. Yeah. And
Yeah.
here we go, and I had to do this concept I developed in different way, but we have a problem on definition of consciousness. For example, if we agree that we are consciousness, in the end of our journey, we are all consciousness. Yeah, but lots of people are trying to define what consciousness is. And as soon as you define, you put the consciousness in duality. So you just can say consciousness is. That's it. You have to shut up, but you didn't define. So people in duality, they say, no, you have to define. But if I define, I keep something else outside.
Yeah.
So we have this problem, and it should be like this. That's why I was talking about we have limitation in perception, and they gave us the opportunity to know when it's beginning and when it ends, when it's high, when it's low. It's really, really, really tricky, and we should go over and over in this discussion. Yeah, but there are lots of scientists. For example, Pribram used to say that this reality is virtual. It's an hologram, and it's also a fractal. So
right.
when you think about fractal, you cannot think anymore about micro and micro, because it's always the same. And in an hologram, I don't know if you know the theory of hologram, but if you have an hologram and you cut it in half,
Yes.
and you take a little piece, in that little piece, there is all the picture of the one picture.
Yes.
So that's why someone says in the ancient culture, wherever you want to go, you're going to find you. So you always find yourself. And I know it seems like spiritual, you know, Ashwita, I tend to not talk about religion, spirituality, because it's kind of sometimes it's difficult to manage. Yeah, it's much more easy talking about science. But nowadays, science, it's becoming a new religion. So we tend to go anyway that portion of our experience. And something experience, as you correctly said, and I agree, we tend to give a label just to say, okay, stay there just a second so I can move myself, or you stay there, but nothing stay there. Happiness, it's when you have 5 years old, happiness is your bicycle. Yeah, when you have 15 years old, happiness is the first kiss, maybe. So it's changing. Everything is changing. And I would like to, and I already told you this because I had several months of meditation in all the compartments of consciousness and cause effect, karma, whatever we already discussed. Yeah, but I would like to present something that I wrote, that I put it down so that we can also talk about that. It goes like this. To be is not to be calm. To be calm is not to be. That's because the one who becomes is, but the one who is, it doesn't become, because it's stuck. So because everything is moving, is changing, it's becoming, therefore nothing is. Nothing is like this. It's becoming. So to be, it's static, and to becoming is dynamic. And we already know that from the uncertainty principle, if you know where you are, that means to be, if you know where you are, you cannot know your motion.
Yes.
In the way in the way around, if you know your motion you're moving with, so the becoming, you cannot know who you are. So sometimes we say stop, yeah, and think who you are, but thinking is a process, it's not a stock. So because,
Thinking is also becoming.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Becoming. So therefore, because everything is moving, I shouldn't say I am, I should say I'm becoming. That's
Yeah.
I hope lots of people that are listening, they don't want just know who they are, they should want to know who they are becoming. It's a process, it's a journey, the existence, life, it's a movement. It's not something stuck in time. And we try to define, I know, because it seems easy, but you cut off possibilities. And we should go back in possibilities. Sometimes we say, no, I cannot say this to this guy. I mean, it could be offensive. No, basically you can. For example, I always ask this question to my clients. You are in front of a traffic light, yeah? It turns red. Can you pass through? And they say, no, I can't. And I reply, yes, you can. For example, if you are an ambulance, you can. You shouldn't, because by law, you can have a fine, yeah? You shouldn't pass through because it's dangerous, but you can. Don't cut off possibilities. Taking in consideration, and then we should talk about responsibility, and then we should talk about freedom. You know, it's complex. And I hope in this discussion we could open the maximum so that people is spinning now, right now, having much more questions than answers.
Yeah, that's how I've also seen it for a long time. I call it, is it really a can't or is it a won't? Because we do confuse that a lot. So many things that people say, I can't do this. No, I don't want to do it, is the truth, you know? Yeah, to summarize, I think there's a, you know, there's a lot of teachers that kind of say that it's three lines basically. I am, you know, everything is one. I mean, that's how you begin. Sorry, everything, the world is real, and you know, the inner world is not so real because you're not in touch with that. You begin with that, and then you go into the inner world is real, and the external world is all not real. It's all Maya. And then in the end, you're like, no, that's real, and this is real, and everything is just real.
Yeah, yeah. And my mentor says, you have a point A where you are, yeah, something, and then you have point B and point C. You have point A, you are that something, you go through an experience, B, and then, for example, let's make it simple, you are outside of the labyrinth, A, yeah? Then you go inside of the labyrinth, B, you do the experience of being inside of the labyrinth, and then you go outside of the labyrinth. So people normally, they tend to collapse stuff and they say, oh, so therefore A and C, they're the same, but they're not. The difference between A and C, it is awareness. You go through this experience to build up awareness, and then when you are aware of everything, you discover you are everything because you are aware. But you see, I should say it takes time, but we know times it doesn't exist. So we have to decide what part we are talking with. And we cannot escape this game called life, and we shouldn't. That's why sometimes I say I don't like to talk about transcending stuff. Yeah, you can.
Who will transcend anyway?
Exactly. 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 You see,
So,
you always finish my sentences, but in much more clever way. Yeah, I struggle to do something and you boom. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, let's open the floor. Is there anyone else? I mean, I don't see many videos on today. But is there anyone else that wants to say something, ask something? What's up with you guys?
Or maybe first of all,
Namaste.
Namaste.
I am just very surprised with the topic of discussion today. I had the fortune of reading the Agora book of Robert Svoboda. So I was just reading the book one. And in that, the portion I was reading today was about how the concept of Maya, as he defined it, and how our perceptions and our perspective of what is the reality, like how Caruso, Colzi said, it will be all relative, but ultimately each relative reality is part of the bigger reality. So there is nothing real or unreal. It was so beautiful, and it was just like just a reinstatement of what I read, and so beautifully explained. Excellent. Thank you so much for the because I was really not able to understand the concept well in the book. When you read it, maybe it needs 4 or 5 readings to get the true meaning. But today, maybe God will that I understood this. I understand this concept better. Thank you so much, Ashwita, for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
thank you.
Yeah. So one point for the others, I would like to, just because I read it today. So our realities, as Dr. Robert Svoboda's book says, is a consequence of our Rinanubandhas, which is past life attachments, and our vasanas, that is tendencies of our ancestors to fulfill their desires, and as well as the Rinanubandhas and vasanas of all the people around us. So that is, so how much ever we try to view the reality in the real sense of the term, that reality can never be viewed. So whatever you view will always be colored by these vasanas and Rinanubandhas. So if you have to transcend that, as you just said, if you transcend, you lose it. If you don't transcend, you don't see it. So it is like it is that situation. So so beautifully explained, and so beautifully I don't have words to say. I was able to understand this very clearly now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And my question will be, you know, we try to unveil the truth of Maya. What if the reality is the veil? Maybe it's the veil, and we try to unveil and we cut off reality.
Yeah. I had one very interesting insight as well today, a little bit of a detour probably. But we have this thing, I don't know how much you have this in Europe. It's not very extreme in comparison, I know, but we have this thing in India we call the evil eye, roughly translated. You know, like you buy a new watch, for example, and someone else sees the new watch and says, oh my God, that's such a pretty watch. And the next day the watch breaks. You know, it happens, especially watches, it's fine, things, it's still okay, you know, but a lot of like babies can just get sick after they meet some relative, and the relative is like, oh my God, such a pretty baby, so healthy. And from that day onwards, they're just sick for the next 3 years. It has happened. So
it's kind of, don't say that, otherwise we call it
no, even if you don't, even if they don't say anything, it still happens. And it's gotten a lot worse in the last 1 year, because I think there is a lot of pain inside people. So a lot of people I know are not sharing anything personal on Facebook because it's hitting them very immediately. But it makes so much sense here, because if the observer changes the outcome, then the more observers you have, the more your outcomes are subject to invariable
Yeah,
variable factors, actually.
but
Yeah.
you see, for long times, they said environment is not that big in changing. Then they
Yeah.
say, no, the environment can change you.
Yeah.
But if you know that the observer influenced the observed, maybe the environment is something that is observing you. So you become the experiment. But it's up to you. You want to be an experiment or a science that do the experimentation. That's why
Yeah.
it took somehow and sometime, if you want to reply in other situation, another day, we should talk about responsibility, because we tend to delegate responsibility.
Yeah.
When you delegate too much responsibility, you're not living your life. Someone else decide.
Yes.
You become the experiment.
Yes. Lab rat. That's amazing.
Oh, I can see Bina. Bina, hi. Good to see you. Very, very happy to see you.
I
was
think you
waiting
just
when you will see me.
I think you just got a message in Italian.
So you have stirred up my brain. It was very nice. My brain is all stirred up now.
Very good. Very, very good.
Ah.
Okay, so in bocca al lupo, in the mouth of the worm. Yeah. Okay. So if there is someone that wants to say something or has a question.
I think we've accomplished what we came here to accomplish, which is to blow everybody's minds. So now it's settling down, all the dust. And after a few days, I think the storm will start rising again. Oh my God, Ashwita, you said this. Can you please explain this to me now? Yeah, let's see. This has been so much fun. That's it. Any closing remarks, Caruso?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity, Ashwita. I really appreciate always talk to you. You know, we have those long chats. Yeah, and I always, if you remember how we met, it's strange. It's strange, but I always appreciate that. Thank you so much, because you pushed me to do that in little time, and you checked my way to work, and really, I mean, it means a lot to me. And also I would like to thank people that he was listening, he was showing up today. Thank you so much to be present and be present. And maybe I should say, as you taught me, namaste, but also dhanyavad.
Yes, dhanyavad to Caruso as well for blowing our minds so nicely. Yeah, I mean, it's equally fun for me. I'm glad we catch up like we do. But also, thank you for all the studies that you do and keep us, expose all of that to us.
I will continue.
Yes, please do. We got a comment. Enjoyed to the core. Very informative and engaging discussion. Love the way you explained about the color red. Thank you, Caruso and Ashwita. Looking forward to more sessions. Yay, we should do that. Yeah. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining. This was, it was a selfish reason that I did this, because when Caruso spoke about it the first time, I enjoyed listening to it so much, and I was like, I need to hear that one more time. So yeah, I tend to mostly just rest in that sort of out of the mind phase. So this is a very good activity for the brain, for the mind, not the fabric of the mind. Okay, but yes, thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you again
Thank you
next
so much.
time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.